just share our experience. As they say, experience, hope, and wisdom. Hopefully we have quite a bit of that from the crew gathered here today. So Open Source Recovery is our first show, and actually I think it's going to be a pretty powerful one. So before we get into talking to our guests tonight, maybe we should just quickly go around and introduce ourselves. We still have some of the same wonderful co-hosts from the Designated Driver, but the new improved versions of them, right?
Yes.
So if you want to start us off there, Lynn.
Yep, Lynn.
Alicia.
Don't you love the way she says that?
Yeah.
Sounds like a porno.
Hi, I'm Miss Marie.
Jackie, a.k.a. Teresa.
Carol Cruz, a.k.a. long person in recovery.
Nice.
Peter, you gotta get closer to the mic, guys.
Yeah, he'll yell
If
at
you
you.
can't hear you, then I can't hear you.
He'll yell at
I'm
you.
not gonna yell. I don't care.
Peter.
If you don't want to be heard.
Okay, so like I said, we've got a couple of guests for your listening pleasure this evening, and our first guest, we usually have a very good time on the show. We joke and we kid, but we're going to get into something that's a little bit more serious this evening, and I give that its due respect. So. I'm not going to speak too much. I'm going to let our guests speak about this. But we've asked, or Maria has actually asked us to come on, and she wants to talk for her husband, John, who unfortunately passed away due to an overdose this July. And, when I spoke to her a little bit earlier today, and she gave me a little bit of the background, and how this occurred and what led up to it. And, unfortunately, this is the reality of the potential consequences of addiction, and in particular, opiate addiction. And so I'm really going to let her tell the story, but I just want to say that I think it's extremely brave, and I have a tremendous amount of admiration for her coming on and doing this. A lot of people shy away from talking about this kind of, this cause of death. People want to hide that from the world, and that's probably in some ways the exact opposite of what we should be doing if we want to get past the stigma and we want to educate people. Because unfortunately, it's what catches people's attention. When we lose people due to this epidemic, and it's what catches the politicians' eyes, and it's what captures the public's eyes. And I will say, unfortunately, for every one person that we lose, there's probably 1,000 people out there whose lives are just decimated by this illness. But when we lose someone, it certainly hits us in a deeper place. So I'm going to ask Ismarie to talk to our audience and tell us about John and about who he was and about how we lost him.
Okay, I'm a little nervous.
That's all right. It's okay.
All right.
I guess so. We start at the beginning, right? So John was born a heroin addict. His mom used to do heroin when she was pregnant with him, and then she overdosed when he was 6, and unfortunately she passed away. I think from then on, he was put in the care of his grandmother, and then a little while later his grandmother passed away too. From then on, I think that he was put into the care of his uncle at the time, or someone who was really close to him, who he was told to call uncle almost. And this man kind of abused him emotionally and physically. And he grew up thinking, he would always tell me the story that when he wanted to eat that day, he would go to the corner store and sweep the floors and be like, okay, so if I sweep the floors and I throw the garbage out, can I have a slice of pizza? And that's basically how he would grow up. One of his teachers, actually, when he was in elementary school, noticed that he had scabies and he was really malnutritioned, and she reported it. And DCF came and actually took him away, and he got put into DCF custody in a child center. a little time passed, and she ended up adopting him. So she fostered him at first, and then she adopted him. And I think that the adoption went through when he was 13. By then, it was already kind of set that he was going to live life the way he wanted to. You know, like, he was his own boss. He's a teenager. He didn't want to listen to everyone. And she tried her best, and she did her best to give him everything that she thought that kids needed. But then he rebelled. So he left, I think, when he was like 16 or 17, and he went to go live basically on a friend's couch or something like that. And he started drinking, and he found his love for alcohol. And he would drink and he would drink all day long. And I think he was hospitalized 2 or 3 times. And they had to like pump his stomach from alcohol poisoning. From then, I think he started using like marijuana, like recreational, you know, like kids be like, oh, I'm just smoking weed. It doesn't matter. And it woke up something in him until he started hanging around with the wrong people, I guess. You get stuck in like the crowd, or you crave something more. And he got into uppers. So he loved like cocaine, Molly, ecstasy, like party drugs, like rave drugs. Mm-hmm. He was into that for a little while. Again, I didn't get to experience that side of him because I met him after. But this is stuff that like he told me. And then after that came his addiction to heroin. So after being up all the time, he would tell me that he wanted to feel down or like go to sleep or relaxed. And he would always say that he wanted to feel numb. He would always tell me that because the pain of losing people and the pain of not feeling wanted, he told me, would almost eat him alive, and that he wanted to feel numb. I guess they had caught him, and his best friend at the time had gotten caught with drugs or something, and they got arrested. And I think they did like 30 days in an inpatient rehab and then house arrest, and then they would get off. That's the deal. So while he was doing that, he went into like a sober house. His friend went into a sober house too. The friend's girlfriend got kicked out, or so he says. And then the friend went to go live with her. There was like this giant party. And John was like, no, that, you know, he wasn't going to go to the party that day. And lo and behold, the next day, his best friend was dead from overdose. So now he lived with not only the pain of losing his mother, his father, his grandmother. Now he lost his best friend in the whole world. Right. So now has even more pain than before. And I think that's when I came around. So I was very shielded growing up. I have 5 sisters. We live in like this big house with a big white fence, and my dad raised us in those 4 walls, so you didn't really get to see anything. So meeting John was like, oh God, you know, oh my God, he's a breath of fresh air. He's so great. Oh my God. Everyone always asks me like, why John? Like, why John? He's so crazy. Like, why John? And I'm like, because John is everything that I'm not. That's the simple answer. Together we made one person. He was everything. He was ambitious. He was, spontaneous. He was strong, and he didn't care what anyone thought. And I think that's my biggest lesson that I've learned from him, is just not to care. A lot of people, when they ask me like, what John die of? And they expect me to lie, or they expect me to say, well, he got sick. And no, that's not the truth. I'm not embarrassed to say what he died of.
No, should
Right. You shouldn't.
He struggled. Towards the end, he felt, he was doing really good. He went to a great rehab. He went to Rushford in Middletown. He was doing great. He was serious.
Well, back up because you guys got married.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We got married. The best day ever. We got married.
Thank you, Jackie.
We got married.
I want you to understand this kid was amazing. Like, he came to my house when I got out of jail. It was like,
Yeah.
we're going Outback. You want something to eat? Like, I never met this
Yeah,
kid in my life.
yeah,
You sure you
that's-
don't want something to eat?
That's the person he was. I'm telling you, at his funeral,
You want to come
John
with us? I'm like, on my house arrest. Like,
John
yeah,
would
let's
always
go.
tell me, you know, I got a lot of friends. I'm like, everybody says that. He thinks he's so cool. He doesn't have any friends. It wasn't until his funeral that like 300 people showed up. Right. And it was people that known him from when he was 6 to people that were just like, I met him at the gas station. I was $5 short, and he gave him to me. And I have to come say bye. that's who he was. And I think that's what I fell in love with. I didn't fall in love with someone. I don't think you fall in love with someone who's on drugs, right?
No.
Nobody like goes out there and is like, let me get the freshest drug addict. No, I don't think nobody does that.
Not born
No.
to be that either.
No.
Yeah. He was everything I'm not. So we got married and things were like really, really great, you know, but the honeymoon stage was like cut short, right? Because now we got this. How old is he? I had just turned 21. So that means he had just turned 23 or 22, around there. I don't know. So now it's like, okay, John, this is how you be a husband, and this is how you like treat your wife, and this is where you got to be at nighttime, and this is where. And he's like, well, I don't understand. I'm like, yeah, because nobody ever gave you rules.
Right.
Nobody gave you he's like, I hate rules. I'm a grown man. Like, I understand that, but this is society, and we all have rules, and you need to conform a little bit. So then, like, by the end, he was like, great. Like, we used to argue all the time, and I used to be like, John, you better bring your butt in here in this house at a married time. Like, everything was that you're married. You need at a
Right.
married time. It wasn't until maybe 7 months or 6 months after we got married that he showed signs of struggling again. Mm-hmm. And it was, I think it's because he never matured or like understood how to cope. You know, like when coping skills, they're really, really important.
Yeah. And you don't develop them when you're using substances.
Yeah.
And when no one shows you.
He really didn't. Yeah. So now he has the stress of paying bills, right? He has the stress of me. He has the stress of going to work, and he hates work. And, like, he hated his job at the time. And I guess he turned to the only thing that he knew was going to make him feel better.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
We turn to what's familiar.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's what he used to say. Yeah. That was familiar to him. So he went off to a rehab in Orlando. Mm-hmm. He went to Orlando Recovery. And he went, and it was like this big thing. And I'm like, oh, my God, I'm never going to see him again. Oh, my God. You know, so drama queen. And he would, like, call me every day. The letters back and forth. And I think he stayed there for, like, 3 months. 3 months, almost 4 months. And at first, he was like, that's it. Because, you know, he went in there, and he was like, I got to do this for me. I got to do this for me. And then he actually gets there. And he's like, well, I feel like once the drugs is out my system, I'm done. Like, that's it.
Right.
Like, I'm clean, so now I can go back to my life. And I was like, it just doesn't work that way.
No,
It doesn't work that way. You have to learn. At that time, I guess he wasn't ready or he wasn't mature enough. So he stayed there basically because I made him stay there. Because I was
Did
like,
they include you though in family services, any family aftercare or anything like that?
John was like the dream guy. Like, everything was, please ask my wife. Ask my wife. He couldn't go to the grocery store and buy milk without calling me. He'll be like, you want 2% or regular? Like, he was like the dream guy. Like, he would include me in everything. And I think that's what one of his counselors had said to me, that he was one of those people that right off the bat, I think sometimes, like, addicts try to hide it from their families. Or, like, be like, well, can you call my wife and tell her this? Or let's not call her at all. And John was always the kind of guy who was like, well, if we're going to do that, I need to call my wife. And we could put her on speaker, and then we could, like, plan it out with her.
What I meant is more so because I work with families and help them
Like counseling for me?
to find their recovery. You know, the families, a lot of times families don't realize that they're in a recovery process too.
Yeah, no, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
No.
And
In
but
my
I'm-
mind,
that's
in my
what I'm
mind,
saying, they
his
didn't
drug
include
problem
you.
is
They
the
didn't
issue.
yeah.
In my mind, right? In my mind, his drug problem is the issue. I don't need help.
Right.
I don't need anything. It's not until now that I realize that I can't do it by myself.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, even though John is gone, it still weighs. Like, you know, I think you carry their addiction with them, right? You carry the cross with
Yeah.
them.
Yep.
When you love somebody the way I love John, it just doesn't go away because he's not here anymore. What part of the story was it?
Did you feel like you could save him?
Don't
Girl,
we all?
stop.
All the time.
Yeah.
Don't we all? All the
do too.
time. All the time.
And would it hurt
yeah.
that almost like we feel like our love isn't enough?
not good enough.
On the other
Yeah.
side.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I felt like that. I felt like, what am I not doing as a wife that would make him turn back and do that? What am I, like, we always kind of knew. We always kind of knew that if he couldn't learn to cope and learn to deal with what he'd been through, that he would go this way. We always kind of knew it was always kind of like a topic of conversation that we never really wanted to talk about, but we would have. And he would always tell me, but never did I think that it was going to happen right now. Never did I think that it was going to happen in a time where he was
doing good.
He was doing so good.
Right.
He was doing so good. I'm talking meetings every day.
You went to a meeting that night.
Yeah, he
wow.
came from a meeting. He had the commitment. He was like, sometimes I go to meetings and my mind like dozes off, and I'm like, okay, well, maybe you should get a little bit more into it. He's like, you're right, I'll do the commitment. So he was like bringing the coffee every day, serving the coffee, making sure that he was in it. I never in a million years thought that this would happen now. I thought, it would happen if he relapsed again and he would go on these crazy binges, and I thought that's when it would happen.
It's Marie, I think you and I talked a little bit about this. It's extremely unfortunate, but unfortunately not that unusual. Is that it is when people are doing well is when they overdose. And I asked you when you told me he had been to rehab and to a sober house and was doing all this positive things in his recovery. I asked you if he was on Suboxone, and you said no, and that really struck a chord with me because I have heard this story many times where people go into residential treatment and, like you say, they've been there for a while, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. They feel...
But that's not a while.
In their mind.
Yeah, in their mind.
Yeah.
Listen,
Yeah.
John would think 60 days was like a lifetime.
And it is, you spend it in...
He'd be like, I've been here 59 days.
Yeah, well,
Like,
if one of us were to have to go to a place 59 days, we'd say that's a
Yeah,
long
right.
time, right?
I agree.
So what happens is people come home and they don't realize that they've been sober in a bubble.
Right.
And they don't
Yes.
realize that they're going to have to reinsert themselves back into the stress of their life.
Yeah.
And that they're going to have to reinsert themselves into their lives where substances are available and prominent.
I don't think John learned that till the last time.
Right.
Till
And
this time.
The problem is that when people do this, they don't usually have perfect recovery even after a residential stay. And when you come home from residential treatment and you don't have perfect recovery, you grossly underestimate how much your tolerance has dropped. And I was at a conference called the Opiate Epidemic in New England. It was a conference on that was a paraphrase of the title, but it was similar to that. Mm-hmm. And there was a researcher and a prominent guy who was talking about this phenomena. And he was pretty adamant about it. And he said, to those residential programs who are not letting your clients be on Suboxone and not sending them home on Suboxone, I want to thank you for killing several of my clients. And the audience was like gasping, like, "Whoa, did that guy just say that?" Yeah. But he was very livid about the fact that these programs are not giving the physiological aspect of this disease its due. And overdose happens when people have a bit of recovery time and they don't have the protection of medication-assisted therapy.
I think that's the only way that people listen. I think because if you go out and you say, well, they need help, nobody listens. But if you say, well, this is happening because of this, this, and this,
right,
then people listen.
It's been my experience that people grossly underestimate the physical part of heroin or opioid.
Well, you have to look at also too. You wouldn't send a cancer patient home without their medication.
Right.
Correct? You wouldn't send somebody with diabetes.
I had one
out.
girl.
Yeah.
I posted on Facebook. Mm-hmm. One of John's friends posted on Facebook. Addiction is a disease and this and that. And this one girl felt that it was necessary to be like, well, I'd rather fight for real diseases.
Yeah.
How realer does this get?
I can't even.
How realer does this get?
Well, we're going to be fighting about the stigma and discrimination about addiction and the treatment behind it for a very long time.
Well, because it's an invisible. There's when you have cancer, it's measurable.
Right.
So what people don't understand
they think it's a choice.
Well, what people don't
Exactly.
They don't understand about the physical component of opiate addiction is that it looks like you're through with detox after a week. And I've said this
Bullshit.
I've said this before on the show, and Jackie, who has experienced this, knows what I'm talking about. It is
18 months.
Well, that's post-acute withdrawal.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
But we're
before
gonna
I start to think normal.
Okay, that's the post-acute withdrawal piece that your thinking continues to get clearer over time, even up to a year or two. But what I'm talking about is acute withdrawal, right? So when you go into a detox, they say you look better after a week. Your stomach is functioning properly. Right. Your leg muscles have stopped twitching.
Oh yeah, John would say that all the time. He'll be like, "I'm healthy now."
It's about a week. But what they're not looking at is the fact that the opiate receptors in your brain, they're not even close to being comfortable to operating without opiates stimulating them for at least about 90 days. Right. That's the acute withdrawal process from opiates. And I worked in a residential program for young men, 18 to 25, and it was a year-long program. And they were coming into that program after multiple treatment efforts in residential, followed by treatment by relapse at home. 6-7 times. Then finally the family said that this is not working. You're going to go into a year-long program. So those clients would come into the program and they would routinely tell me that the first 90 days or so, the first 3 months, all they thought about was getting high 24/7, and it was on their mind constantly. Now they know that
even in a bubble.
Yeah, in the bubble. But they didn't act on it because they were in the bubble.
Stages of recovery.
If you take them outside of the bubble in that 90 days without medication, like Suboxone, which quells the opiate receptors and addresses the physical component of this addiction, they are very likely to relapse. Extremely likely, statistically extremely likely to relapse. And if you just do detox, it's about a 95% relapse within the first 30 days. Right. So what you're doing is you're getting people who have gotten a little bit of clean time and their tolerance has dropped, and you're putting them back out there in a very dangerous situation, which sounds like exactly what happened to John.
Yeah, because I think that they almost, I can't speak for addicts. I can't even speak for you right next to me. You know, all I know is what he would tell me. And he would kind of make it seem like, okay, I've been this much clean. I'm cured. And
how many times did he say that to you?
Oh, every time.
Right.
It's every time. And I'm just like, it wasn't until, this last time when he actually went to rehab and he was in it. Like, I think he was named, like, chairman of the floor or something because he was so in it.
Right.
It wasn't until this time that he was like, when I would go see him on Saturdays, he would sit me down and he'd be like, I'm going to be an addict for the rest of my life, right?
He got that.
And I'm like, yeah, I know. And he's like, and you know that at any point it could go wrong, right? And I said, yeah, I know that. And he said, but you still, like, want to be married to me anyway? And I'm like, yeah. Yeah. We're in this together. You're not alone. I was trying to make him feel like he was never alone.
And that's the antidote to what he was feeling. And the reason he got to the point that he did and he tried so hard was in large part because you gave him that. Because John didn't die of heroin overdose. John died of abuse.
Yeah.
Because that abuse that he experienced, that neglect and abuse.
Yeah, he couldn't.
That's what he tried to outrun his whole life, and it caught up to him. In the form of heroin overdose, but it's the abuse that killed him.
But this is disease that tells you that you don't have a disease.
Right.
It's a disease of isolation. It's for me, 23 years ago, and being a heroin addicted, and a lot of things have changed. There was no Suboxone. I was on methadone.
Yeah.
Everything was very, again, hush hush. You couldn't even talk about it. For me then, and also trying to raise a child that I had, used during my pregnancy that was exposed to, alcohol, drugs, and everything. It's who I had around me that was trying to uplift me and trying to help me. It was my DCF worker that treated me like a human being than the animal that I felt like I was.
That's what John said.
But I think it's important to come on that too, because not only that, but they treated her like an animal. Like when the police came to the house and everything afterwards, they treated her like she. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's funny. It's funny you say that, because when I went to get my Dunkin' Donuts tonight, and I'm not promoting Dunkin' Donuts, but what I'm promoting is that there was 4 police officers in the Dunkin' Donuts, not just getting donuts, by the way, but I gave them my card, and I told them, I said, I do interventions.
Yeah.
I talk to people that you pick up that are struggling.
Yes, I've offered the police departments on the shoreline to do training.
Yeah.
To be on call 24/7 if they should have.
Because it's about educating.
someone-
It's about changing the
Yeah.
language.
That's
I don't
exactly
call
what I feel
people- I
like.
don't call people that I work with today, I don't call them addicts.
Right.
I tell them they're recoveries. If you got 1 hour, 1 minute
Sober.
sober,
That's it.
you're in
You're on
recovery.
the right track. That's
You're
what I
on-
used to tell John. When John used to relapse and he would come, and a lot of people think that he did it out of pleasure, that he would go and he would get high and he would love it.
Right.
But they don't know him like I knew him.
Right.
I was there when he would come in the house and he would be like, I think you should just kill me. And I'd be like, why? Why would you say that? And he'll be like, because I can't
painful.
stop.
It's painful.
Because I can't stop. And I'd be like, but that's okay. We can work on it. Together we can work on it. And I was like, listen, tomorrow you'll wake up. It's a brand new day. And you decide on that brand new day what kind of day you're going to have.
Yeah.
And I mean, I have it on my keychain. When he would go and he was serious about it, he would always tell me just for today. Right? So that's how I live my life now.
Yep.
Tomorrow isn't promised. Look at John.
No.
Look at what happened like to me. I'm 23 years old and I'm a widow. Tomorrow isn't promised. And don't save for tomorrow what you could do today. And I think that's why we're all here, right?
Right.
Do you think he never truly dealt with everything from
No.
his past?
That's
Never.
what it is.
Like counseling, like
Yeah.
true.
Right.
Other than
we
the
have
rehabs
a
and detox,
phenomenal
you know.
counselor. We actually met this counselor the first time I put John in a detox program, and we met this counselor, and he's absolutely great. And he was
You
John's.
can say his name if you want, since he's.
His name's Hakeem. He's like the best ever. He's like really understanding. And he invited me in for a family session. And till this day, he's actually my therapist now.
Great.
And he invited me in, and he always tells me, he's like, you know, you are the first girl, the first wife, first girlfriend, whatever you were at the time, that came in to talk to me about John. And he's like, and I remember being there, and he didn't look at John like John was an animal. And he didn't talk about John. He didn't use things like, well, they think, and, well, the way you guys think.
Or you should
Right.
do this.
Yeah,
or you
he
should
would
that.
never, he would sit there and he would listen. I think that's what John wanted, is for somebody to listen. Just
Absolutely.
listen to them.
Yeah.
Because I'm talking about medication, but you guys are talking about the real medication, which is the therapy. The medication, it only gives you a fighting
You need
chance.
a combination of all of those things.
Yes.
Right. The medication gives you a fighting chance. Then you have to do the work, and part of the work is therapy and counseling.
Exactly. And a lot of the reason why John was doing so good is because he was on the visceral shot.
Yep.
So he was on it. He got it actually at the rehab. He opted for it, and he was like, okay, I'm going to do it. I think he renewed it like 28 days later, and then he did it again. And then I think that in his mind, he said, I'm good. Like, I made it out the
Right.
woods.
But it's important to know is you could still overdose on Vivitrol.
Yeah.
But
You know, he actually told me that. But I think
But what Ismaria is saying now is really important. That John, he got a little
absolutely.
confident.
he got confident.
Right.
And when I think about it, John died on the 9th. I know that John died on the 9th because he was like a stalker. He would text me all the time. You know, we were in love. He was my husband. You know, we're young. He would text me all the time, and the last time he texted me was at 8:30. And that was it. The last phone call he made was at 8:51 to the drug dealer. So I know that he died at 9 o'clock, right? But they didn't find him until the next day.
Yeah.
But when I do the math, so like he died on the 9th, and he was supposed to get it on the 1st.
Right.
So 8 days
Right.
that he was vulnerable, and it killed him.
That's right. And that's
Had
it,
he had gotten
yeah.
that shot, we might have had a different outcome here.
You're
Right.
probably you're,
So he
you're,
was struggling
you're not,
with triggers
yeah.
and cravings and
Oh,
everything.
Yeah,
else
because
right.
I
going
think
on
the
him.
shot, he would tell me that the shot, like, it didn't take everything away, but it helped with his cravings. He
Right.
said, you know, the day that he died, we were actually having a conversation. I was at work, and I sent him a quote. And the quote said, the devil's in my ear whispering, telling me he misses the old me. And I sent him to him, and I was like, this must be what you feel like. And he said, every day. Every
day,
single day I feel that way.
Sometimes the mental cravings are worse than the physical cravings.
Well, the
That's-
the problem is that people. It's a very blurry line between
Yeah.
what is physical cravings and what is mental cravings.
That's true.
That's why I made the point about the 90 days. That those cravings that happen in those 90 days are very much a physiological experience. It is what does your brain do when you're hungry? It thinks about food.
That's exactly
What is-
that's
what
how
is-
I try to
right.
explain. Like,
Right.
so at first we would try to keep it not like a secret, But it was kind of like you didn't want nobody to know.
Right.
Right?
No.
We're
Yep.
going to deal with this. It's just me and you. We're going to do it this way. Now we have this whole thing exploded when John died. He's on the news. The media is portraying him in one way and one way only. Right? And now I'm stuck. I'm Spanish. I got a whole lot of family. So now everyone has questions. Yeah. Well, how long have you known? How long has this happened? And I'm like, hold on. Before you judge him, listen to his story.
Right.
Listen to his story and try to get an idea of why he did what he did.
Thank God he's got you to tell his story.
Yes.
Always. I always used to tell him that. He always used to tell me, if something was to happen to me, tell my story. Because my story could change someone else's story.
Was he using... Was he using prior to that? Prior to
what?
When he passed away? Like, did you see signs of him using, or
No.
was it like
No,
that?
He was
day
like
it happened?
great. He was like great. So we decided like when he went to Rushford, we decided that I was like, John, well, we tried to get you clean in the house. We tried to get you to do everything in the house, and it's not really working. So let's try sober living again. Let's try like a real sober living. He had gotten drug tested a couple of days before that, and he was clean.
Yeah. And that's what I'm trying to say. The slip up at that point is so dangerous because, And
I think one of the biggest triggers, I think it wasn't until this time that he realized that it really is about people, places, and things.
Yeah,
Right.
it
Definitely is.
It's even
Definitely.
about the music you listen
Yes.
to. Like certain songs bumping Molly and Percocet and all these other things.
Right.
He couldn't listen to that because in his mind, he's like, well, I could really use a Percocet right now.
Right.
No. You have to change everything about you. And the second, one of his triggers was having a car.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So he went and he purchased that car, didn't tell me. The car was like a week old because he knew that if he told me, I would be like, John, what are you doing? What are you doing? You can't have a car. And what did he do? He used the car to go get what he needed.
So he didn't.
And
He didn't use, but he was like already thinking about it.
I don't think he was
necessarily.
necessarily
Sometimes we put things
thinking
in replace of. So for me, it was before I would go relapse, it might be food, it might be something else, it might be sex. We kind of replace buying things, going out shopping. It's all the behavior. The behavior changes. And you saw the behavior change happening. With him.
He had this dream car, and the dream car is the car that he was found in. So I think that was supposed to be his reward, right? Like, I'm doing so good.
Yeah. Right.
I have this money. I'm not going to spend this money on dope. Like, I knew that he was doing good because this kid, when I went to go pick up his stuff at the sober house, and every time I saw him, he would have the freshest sneakers. He would have brand new shirts, brand new pants. And I'm like, okay, so I know you're not buying dope because you're fresh. Like, you don't have this much money. Like, you're paying rent. He's paying his bills. He's doing great. So I think he bought the car as a reward to himself. And then not knowing that car would lead him to his final.
Yeah.
Gives you that accessibility and
Yeah, but he didn't think of it that way.
Yeah, of course
So because
not.
he was just learning that people, places, and things, right? So he didn't know that objects was one of it. Something as little as Facebook, we would always argue about Facebook because he had over 1,000 friends there. And I could tell you right now, at least 900 of them are using.
Right.
So if you want... And what I did notice is when I found out that he was dead, and I actually logged onto my Facebook and I saw that his Facebook was active again. It's one of those things that I think he felt like he was strong enough to overcome.
Right.
But he wasn't ready, or he wasn't strong enough, or it was just one of those things that you're not cured. It's something that you need to work on every single day.
It does sound like he was making progress in terms of starting to understand the chronic nature of the disease and accepting it and asking for help. But it takes time to learn all the nuances of staying clean. And when you're coming from a place where John was coming from, they call it rehabilitation. A lot of what you're describing is habilitation. Right. John didn't have those basic skills that come from being raised in an environment like you were raised in. He didn't have some of the core self-worth that we get from being raised by a family.
And you could tell he had
care.
not like really low self-esteem because he knew he was cute. Physically, like he know, like, and I've never met somebody like so conceited, but he was like about it in a cute way. Like I would joke around with him and I'd be like, "Oh, John, you're so ugly. You're so ugly," and he'd be like, "No, I know I'm not ugly. Like I know. I'm like, oh, okay, but it was about like his insides. He didn't feel that he was worthy enough to be happy. Right. He didn't feel that he was worth it, and that's one of the biggest problems. And I think that's one of the things that he would work about. He would try to work through in therapy. Like, yes, all these things happen to you, but you are still worth it. You're still human. It doesn't matter. We all make mistakes. Yeah. I got a couple addictions myself. I love candy bars.
I love candy bars too.
I can't put them down. But it's just we're not perfect.
But and I think like also too that there was a lot of trauma. Because you talked about, I can identify. I brought a child in this world that was exposed, and he has learning disabilities. He has had his struggles. He's 22 years old. He's currently on medical marijuana. He has social anxiety. He has PTSD. Thank God that I am a sober parent, that I'm able to help him through a lot of the issues, that I stuck around. A lot of the issues that he's had and a lot of things that, going forward, and he sees a therapist and things like that. But it sounds like there was a lot of trauma and for a lot of us in recovery, if we don't touch on that trauma, we just bring it into every relationship that we get into. Yeah. And it sounds also too that he was running this marathon. And whether, the people that he was engaged in that were in recovery, we tend to look at other people and where they're at in their recovery, and we think we should be there too.
Exactly. Yeah, he used to do that all the time. Yeah. He used to be like, well, this guy's like 90 days clean and he's got this and I'm 90 days clean and I don't have that.
He sounds good. I gotta one up him. And I gotta sound
he would use it like kind of like a finish line. Like he'd be like, well, I'm looking at Tony.
It's not a race. It's not a marathon.
Yeah, but that's how he would look at it. He'd be like, well,
sometimes
Tony,
I gotta take it one day at a time, 1 second at a time.
Yeah, but he'd be like, Tony,
has a car.
It's clean. Yeah, he's clean, and it's 90 days, and he says he doesn't have any more cravings. So I know as soon as I get there, I'm going to be like that, and it's just not that, that for him.
He was still young too, right?
Yeah, he was 24.
Kind of young.
He turned 24 in rehab.
The thing about the stigma too is if you looked at John, you would never know this kid.
You would never think that. Oh my God, I'm so happy you said that.
You would.
Would you think I am?
No.
Okay. Neither. But that's what I'm saying. It's so important to bring about because you would look at John, you would think, oh, this kid is the happiest.
Even when he was using, like, a lot of times, like, I never was exposed to it. Things like that, but like watching movies, they paint a picture of what you're supposed to look like if you're an addict and what what you're supposed to do, like when you use. And John was never none of those things. Right. Like he always had a haircut, he was always gorgeous. You would know that he would start struggling because he would start losing weight.
That's important to know. It's our neighbors, it's our brothers, it's
exactly.
our sisters, it's our friends.
Listen, it's not until John passed away that people are talking, and it makes me so happy. Because the people that I would never think, they're talking, they're coming up to me and they're like, I've attended funerals that I think the guy had a heart attack or I think the guy just got cancer and got sick. And they're like, I want to let you know my brother died of this. My mother struggles with this. My sister struggles with this. And I'm like, so it is common. So it's not just me and John against the world. It's our neighbors.
It's become more common. And again, like I say, 23 years ago, and my mother, I came from a family of alcoholics. And, no, we didn't talk. But I remember my mother coming to my high school and talking about alcoholism and AA and all these things, about people getting in being in recovery. And I was so proud of her, but that wasn't a guarantee. That wasn't a rite of passage that I wasn't going to go down that path myself. That's why I started my program, the Reach Out Project, to remove the stigma, put about awareness out there, be supportive to families like yourself. And also show that recovery is possible. We talk a lot about addiction, which is really, really important. We put these big posters up on, and billboards up, don't drink and drive and all these things. But the bottom line is that we need people telling stories like you.
I agree. Absolutely. I agree. Yeah. I think awareness is one of the biggest things. Like if you look, I have my 15-year-old niece here in the studio. You want to know why? Because she needs to know. Yeah. She needs to know that he was her uncle.
Yeah.
And she loved him, and he loved her back. And I don't even know if she knew most of the time when he was using, but this is what he died of, and that didn't make him a bad person.
Absolutely.
That made him a
We're not
person
bad-
with a story.
We're just sick
That's
people
it.
with that need help. We're not bad people.
No.
I have.
I think the more we try to cover it, the worse it's going to get.
Yes. Yeah, it's definitely.
I a couple of Alicia has been to my practice in medicine and met my clients, and I have about 70 clients total, and I would say, pretty much every one of them I would be proud to call my friend. They're good people. Some of them have done things outside of their value system, in the throes of their addiction.
Right.
But as I get to see them as sober people, they've been sober for many, many months, most of them, and I get to see them at baseline who they are, and they're all good people. There's no doubt about that.
Right, what the media portrays as a typical person in addiction, it does not exist.
No,
I mean,
it
they
doesn't
exist,
exist.
but that's like rare.
Well,
Yeah.
That is the
Yeah.
rarity.
If you want to get scientific about it, there's there's about a 1% 1% of the population meet the criteria for antisocial personality disorder.
Right.
And if you look at the population of people with addiction, the percentage of those individuals who meet the criteria for antisocial personality disorder, you want to guess, Lynn? How much? What do you think? I don't know. It's 1%.
Was it?
1%.
1%.
Hold on.
So
It's
it's-
kind of like the news. I was watching the news, right? And I usually flip it when they start like the whole opioid epidemic thing. And I'm like, I can't even take this. I'm just going to flip it. 2 days ago, I said, you know what? I'm going to be strong and I want to hear what they have to say. It was like 30 seconds long. And they were like, well, 3 out of 5 Americans admit to having an opioid addiction. So everyone should just use your prescription narcotics as advised. Okay, thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
But that's it.
I'm like, hold on. That's not going to make me think twice about doing narcotics. And I think narcotics are just so easy to get. The day that I found out John died, I got my teeth pulled. I got prescribed 30 Vicodin for a teeth thing. I didn't even pick them up because I'm so scared because I saw what it did to him.
That's right.
Right.
I was like, no. It's too accessible. It's too mainstream.
It is. I want to make sure that Carol gets a chance to. She briefly mentioned her program, the Reach Out project, and I just wanted to make sure that we get a couple of minutes. We're going to definitely continue our conversation about John, but Carol, did you want to just tell our listeners about what you do and what the Reach Out project is all about?
Last time I was on the show, I just shared that, I started the Reach Out Project 3 years ago, and it was based off of when I went through a program and wanted to start a project in Milford to bring awareness, to remove the stigma around addiction, and also that my husband's stepson had died at an underage drinking party. So he became my muse and wanting to really get into the high schools and bring more peer support. Young people with lived experience. I'm in the 50 range, so I still speak that language, but it's really powerful when you have a 15, 16, 17-year-old that shares that they've got a year, 2 years, 3 years of recovery. And I've still been advocating to get young people into the schools and talk about their experience in recovery, and also, not just don't drink and drive and all that stuff, but more so, hey, I'm here for you. I understand what you're going through. And that's not just for alcoholism and addiction. It is also for suicide prevention. Mm-hmm. And so I started off with a walk. In 2014, had the mayor there, had a family that had lost their loved one. They came up to him and said, we really need more programs like this in Milford. Across the state, we definitely need to support these programs. So the Reach Out stands for Recovery, Education, Accountability, Advocacy, Community, and Hope. It's a recovery community where you live. I've worked for several agencies working with medication assistance and also working with the recovery community, and just bringing where, persons like myself can come out and say, hey, I'm struggling and I need a support, and families especially too. So this recovery walk that I'm doing on September 30th is going to be down at Walnut Beach.
Let me write this down.
Yeah, well, I'll have a flyer. I have flyers for everyone. Flyers for everyone.
Can you
get a car. You get a car. You get a car.
Yeah. Can you read the website so people
absolutely.
can know that?
So it's www.reachoutprojectinc. That's reachoutprojectinc.org. I'm sorry. I'm gonna spell it out. And you can also reach me on my number at 203-507-4223 if you'd like to volunteer, if you'd like to donate. There's also an area on the website where you can donate and sponsor, become a sponsor. It starts at 5 p.m. We're also having a candlelight ceremony on the boardwalk to honor those that we've lost to this opiate and other addictions. And also we'll have two great speakers, a young person, Allison Kernan. She's going to be speaking. She's also a recovery coach. And Kelvin Young, he's a sound healer and also a person in long-term recovery. So, we hope that we get a lot of response. The goal is more prevention, just getting awareness out there, and also being able to offer resources to others, to get into treatment, to just have intervention and things like that.
Carol, Luigi, I would like to talk to you offline because I was saying last week so we don't work with adolescents at the Center for Compassionate Recovery, which is my practice in Madison, but we would if we thought, if the need presented itself. And it's very strange. I don't get calls from parents or from kids who are looking for help, but I know they're out there.
Yeah, they're definitely out there.
I think a lot of people just don't know.
Yeah,
like I'm 23. I've never knew this whole world existed. I didn't know there were so many programs. I didn't know anything like the outreach. Like it was just me and John trying to figure out Google. Yeah. Trying to figure out what to do if your husband's an addict. Like literally, I think I Googled that one time at the beginning because it's like you really just don't know what to do.
Right. Yeah. And so maybe there's a need that we would be able to fill.
Absolutely.
That's not. I hear there's not a lot of resources for.
There's not a lot of resources for, especially for adolescents. I know here in Hamden there is an IOP program at the Children's Center.
Yeah.
And I've been part of that along with a couple other people. But there's very little inpatient. I know Rushford has inpatient. We were actually working with them to trying to turn bridge, but that's young adults. There's not.
Right.
You were talking about 14, 15, 16-year-olds. And I think a lot of times parents, again, even with medical marijuana, people are just afraid because it's a fear of the unknown. What if I put my kid on this medication?
Right.
What's going to happen?
I can attest to that, though. I would be scared.
Yeah, but part of recovery is relapse. I had to go through this system 4 times. For me. In multiple treatment centers. But you know what? We're not using people as guinea pigs.
That's right.
And that's it's education.
Right.
It's really, really important. And it's also collaboration. It's having a good doctor. It's having a good therapist. It's having a good coach. Not everybody goes to 12-step programs. So coaching is another alternative to having someone there that understands what you're going through with that lived experience.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I try to do that.
Families, educating the families because
Yes.
they don't understand.
No, they don't.
I try to
Everybody has a
explain
new
it.
normal.
I had to
Everybody
explain
has
it
a
to
new
my
normal.
dad because my dad had no knowledge of John's addiction, none whatsoever until he died. And then he learned about John's addiction through the media and through what his friends were saying about John on the street, which was totally wrong. They portrayed John so wrong. And it wasn't until after we buried John and everything that he came to me and he was ready to hear his story. And I had to tell him, it's like, how your brain tells you need water? You ever been really thirsty?
Yeah.
And your brain tells you need water? That's what it feels like. That's what John would tell me it would feel like. John would be like, sometimes once you get the thought in your head, you can't get it out because it's like really, really having to pee but not being able to find a toilet.
Right.
He would tell me that's what it felt
Right.
like. He couldn't think about nothing else until he got it.
Right.
The other part to that too is, Narcan kits. Like I am such an advocate for Narcan and training for Narcan.
I am too.
And we'll have people like that, at having information tables at this event, but I like to have three or four Narcan kits, and anytime I
Me
hear
too.
somebody that doesn't have it, any of my clients, I definitely say here, because again, you wouldn't have in your home. You talked about the toilet in your home, for instance, you wouldn't have a if you knew your house was going to catch on fire, you would have a fire extinguisher, right? Well, the same thing with Narcan.
Yeah. Yeah,
You would-
definitely.
You want to have
In
prevent-
John's
prevent
car,
a fire
in
from
John's
happening.
car, the car he was found in, there was actually 2 Narcan kits in there. And I'm always thinking, like, the investigation is still pending as to whether he was with people or not, because John was just the type of person where he wouldn't want to do that and get high by himself.
Right.
It would either be other people, so we don't know if people ran out on him or something. But I'm thinking if there was someone in the car,
That could have gave it to him.
you could have. It was literally an arm reach away.
Yeah.
And I think seeing that hurt me even more to think that, oh my God, it was so close to him. He could have been saved.
Yeah.
What's important to know too is like they cannot arrest you. Well,
Yeah, good.
they could,
You could give
Right.
that. And
call 911. Get the
Yeah.
person help.
Yeah,
You will not be
definitely.
arrested.
Definitely. I try to advocate a lot of John would tell me the thing that he loved most about me is that I understood. Even though sometimes I really didn't, but I was open to try to understand. And that's one of the things I said at John's funeral. At first I was like, well, I only want people that are clean there. I only want this and this. And then I thought about it and I was like, what would John want me to do? And he would want me to show them this is where the road leads. And if you need help, come to me. And I actually said it. There's nothing you can say to me. There's nothing you can tell me that you did that John didn't do. Or John didn't tell me he did.
Right.
You're people in my eyes. We're all people. It doesn't matter.
Well, I'm
Doesn't
starting another
matter.
family group in the fall, and I would really.
I'm gonna have to go, girl.
Well, that
Yeah, definitely.
and bring your dad.
I'm gonna have to go. I'm gonna have
You
to bring
your-
everybody.
Yeah.
John's
Where are
friends.
you
Yeah,
gonna
I'll
do
come
that?
in.
Where are you gonna
So
do
I'm
that?
opening my office September, Labor Day, right after Labor Day weekend. My office will be on 26 Broad Street in Milford. And again, my number is 203-507-4223. And Wednesday evenings, at 7:00, we're gonna start our family group. I used to have one back last fall.
So what do you do at family groups? Because I was always told that I should go to like Al-Anon or something like that. But I was like, one of my biggest fears, especially when I was in it, when I was in the binge with him and everything, would be I don't want to go to these meetings and talk about John and have people see him in the wrong way.
I don't discourage people talking about their loved one, but I want them to talk about themselves
And how they're
and
affected.
what's your process of recovery. It's a training session. It's not Al-Anon. It's not any of those 12-step programs. This is a support group, but it's also a training session on how you see yourself in recovery and how you recover and also how you heal.
So technically, I'm in recovery.
Yes, you are.
Yes.
Oh my
Yes.
God.
Yes, you are.
We need to have more of
Hashtag we
those.
do recover.
Yes.
We need to have more of those.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure if you want some people who have been down the road and are doing really well in recovery to participate in your family group, I'm sure some of my clients would be eager to
Absolutely.
do that.
I would love
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. Because like with me, my kids, I just actually talked to my daughter again, and she called me yesterday.
It's great.
But my family shunning me and telling them my children are in the middle of all this, and I don't get to see my kids because I went to jail and did what I did. But my problem's drinking, and they know it. My family knows it. But shunning me away and not being involved and knowing I'm trying to stay sober, having
that never works.
missing, having my
They're
kid,
punishing
especially my
you.
kid.
Yeah.
Yeah,
basically.
John would get punished a lot.
Yeah.
Not by me because I loved him, so I always wanted to be there. But I know by like a lot of people that he knew, a lot of people that he called friends and brothers and sisters, and they would be like, basically, if you're using, I'm never going to talk to you again.
Right.
Like you
Well,
said.
now you're giving him a reason to use.
Yeah,
Exactly.
but well,
that doesn't
yeah,
really
Well,
work.
think about John's background.
Yes,
Yeah,
Marie said it
well,
best though that everybody thinks it's the drugs that are the problem. It's they're using that's the problem.
It's their choice.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
The problem
they
is
don't-
they're using, and once that stops, everything will get better.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah, and it
That's
doesn't.
No,
my
No.
parents. I'm 2 years clean. My parents still don't talk to me, and
That's
I
all right. I'll
wouldn't
talk to you.
use that. We're each other's supporter. I understand why they don't talk to me. I completely understand because I've done a lot of harm to them. I
Families are
also, though,
afraid.
I'm at a point where I wouldn't use that as an excuse to go out and use.
Right.
I'm past that. I'm past that. You know what I mean? But
I think a lot of times the families are afraid.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah,
afraid that
completely.
they're going to be in the situation like you with
Completely.
John.
Yeah.
And it's understandable. That's why it's really important for families. It's not to say, okay, I don't love you and I'm going to need to put you on the back burner, but I have to love me. I have to love me more.
I would tell John that.
Yeah.
I would tell John that. I think because you get, as his wife, you get so in it that it's almost like sometimes I would think that I was the problem. And sometimes I would think that,
Don't
if
you
I
love me
was
enough to
prettier, if I was skinnier, then maybe this wouldn't happen.
No.
Oh no!
But it just wasn't like that.
Stop
And
yourself.
he would get clean and he would tell me, I don't know how you're still with me. I don't know how you're still by my side. And I have the message that I reread them all the time because I'm obsessed with him. And he'll be like, after everything I've done to you, after everything wrong, why are you still here? And the simple answer was because I love you. Because I love you.
And a guy who's been through what John has been through, unconditional love was really the only chance.
He would say that. He said that
had.
at our wedding. He was like, you're the person that showed me that love isn't pretty. If anyone thinks that love is about perfection and stuff like that, it's really not. Love and marriage is about being there. Like, people need to listen to your vows. In sickness, and a lot of people will be like, well, why don't you just leave him? Because then that would mean that I lied in my vows, and I'm not a liar.
Right.
It was in sickness and in health, and in reality, he was sick, and I was going to be there.
Yeah.
And everybody said that, though, Marie, that you showed him love like he's never known. Every single person at that week
I love hearing that.
came up to her and said,
And I guarantee
showed
that's
him love he never knew.
that's why he fought so hard.
Yeah.
I guarantee
absolutely.
He
it.
did.
That's it.
Everyone said that.
Love is painful. Like, I don't know if anybody saw that movie Collateral Beauty.
Oh
But
my God,
there's
I
a part
saw
in
it.
that. In that, there's a part in there where love, the person that's playing love, says to him, love is painful. Love is hurt. I'm in everything. I'm in everything.
I think that's how you know that you're in love, though, right?
Yeah.
When you love him so much, it hurts.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know we're getting just about out of time. I want to again say, Ms. Maria, just the courage to come here and do this is really inspiring, and I sure we all wish you had a different outcome and a different story, but
absolutely.
Hey guys,
but your willingness to come here and do this is just inspirational, and I hope it inspires people outside this room as well.
Yeah.
We're doing that again, really.
Oh,
I want to thank you too, Carol, for coming back.
thank you. I really enjoyed
and everybody
being
and all
here.
the
Thanks,
co-hosts
everybody.
and you guys down there
Thanks
for
for
this
the invite.
emotional support back there. And
Thanks,
Peter.
Thanks
making
for
a good,
having me,
a great
guys.
first show. Thanks, Peter.
And my
Thank
sober
you.
anniversary,
Appreciate it,
September 23rd, by the grace of God. Whoop, whoop.
Good night, Sullivan. Good night, there.
You done?
We're all done.
Okay.
That's it.
Oh my God.